what was your first introduction or encounter of the American Cancer Society?
So in 2008, when I began cancer treatment and I began chemotherapy, I started to lose my hair pretty rapidly. They said within 10 days, and it was probably around that window, but it seemed like really soon. And I was worried how I was going to handle that and what I was going to do about it. And I pretty much decided that I was just going to shave my head. I did have a full head of hair like I do now, but it was coming out so terribly in clumps. And so I went out of my house, shaved my head, came back home, and I had a 3-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old daughter at the time. And the hairstylist put my wig on. But then when I got home, my husband asked to see my head. So he took the wig off, and my 3-year-old went running and cowered away from me and was so scared. So that next day at chemotherapy, I was crying to my nurse, like, how do I get my daughter to not be afraid of me? And she said, there is this 1-800 number that you could call. It's the American Cancer Society, and you could talk to somebody on the phone, and they can walk you through, different things that you can do and how to talk to them. They might have children's books or, books for you to talk to them. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try anything I can. So that same day I went home after treatment and I called the American Cancer Society. And when it was a very tearful phone call, and I started to explain the story, and this girl on the other end was a mom, and she was kind of a new mom, and she told me that, and I expressed my concern and worry, and she said, I have books for you. I'm going to send you books, and I'm going to send you books for you and your husband about cancer diagnosis, and then also about for kids and how they handle moms going through this with their young children. And she was like teary on the phone with me. I was teary, and I was like, she was so supportive and warm and kind. And it was just like the voice like that you needed to hear, like on the other end. It was like just a big hug. And I was just like, this is amazing. I need to tell other people about this. And like within a few days, books came in the mail, and one book, this children's book, had, when you open the middle, it had a bald mommy right in the middle of the book. And I read that book that night when I got it to my children. And when my daughter Erin saw it and said, there's other bald mommies. Well, that was it. She was like, oh, I like your bald head now. So it was like I got my daughter back within days of having that conversation. Meanwhile, she was like, I don't love you anymore. And we love dad. And then I went from that to your bald head. So, I mean, that was my very first encounter. And I was sold from the minute I spoke to her. And her name was Simone. I didn't find out until later on. That's another long story. But her name was Simone. And I actually got to meet her one day. And it was such a warm, inviting in meeting that we hugged, and I thanked her, and we cried again, and it was just she gave me my family back at that moment, in the moment of like, it seemed so silly, but that was my biggest worry at that time, was losing my hair. But it was to my kids, it was embracing their mom in this new look and this new this journey that she's on. So and it helped them. And we have since shared that children's book with other cancer moms going through it, and it helps my children to be able to give back as well. So it was wonderful. Yeah.
Did you encounter any difficulties in getting dressed during your treatment at all?
Well, a little bit. So during my treatment, because I have a heart device and I couldn't have a port, so I did have to have a PICC line in, and so I did have some difficulty in managing wearing like shirts or clothing that have big enough sleeves to work around that. So I would wear my husband's t-shirt. So I think that was like my most difficult time in like getting dressed and finding clothing to wear. Of like, I couldn't really wear my own clothing, which was part of me feeling kind of blah about this whole thing. But I think that a big, like, that was a big focus, really was more of that. And also like embracing the fact that I wasn't wearing a wig, and that I decided to not wear my wig, and finding hats that fit me the right way, and like that I felt okay in, like, because I didn't have hair, and so things like that. But and also like I would wear big earrings sometimes to try to like rock this new look that I had. But I think clothing wise, that was like my biggest issue, was the sleeves, probably at that time. For sure. I think then, because it was almost 15, it was 15 years ago, but like I think that it wasn't as prevalent out there. Now when I see things like that, I think that people are lucky to have access to things that make them feel independent, and that they can still feel good in and feel independent. And I think that's huge. And I think that's a huge part of being a patient of any kind, and in cancer as well. Like, I think that having that still sense of being able to do things for yourself, and not having to rely on other people, because you feel like you're relying on so many other people for so many other things, like, I mean, even just going to the hospital and every day and relying on those nurses and doctors to take care of you, and then other people maybe taking care of my kids when I couldn't, and things like that. Like, you weren't your own person anymore. You had this whole team of people around you. And the one thing that you want to do for yourself is still express yourself through something that you feel good about, like, so, and clothing definitely helps that. But like, I did have a situation that I remembered after that. Prior to my cancer diagnosis, I had this heart condition that I didn't know I had at 25, and I had to have some surgeries, and they went through my groin to do those surgeries. And I was 25 and newly married, but my mother had to dress me in the bathroom of St. Francis Hospital, a heart hospital, where I had my surgeries. And I was embarrassed. Like, I was like a grown woman at that time, and I didn't want my mom in there doing that. Not that I didn't want anybody in there doing it, like, it was just like, I wanted to be able to do that myself. And I couldn't even, like, because it was my legs. So I had to be still for so long. And then I couldn't really walk for so long. And then I had to be so careful about stepping into pants or underwear or anything like that. And it was definitely, I could have used that then even, and I didn't realize it till after. I was like, oh, that would have been another opportunity in my life that I could have used to be able to do that myself. Although I wasn't wheelchair bound or anything, it was very difficult to lift my legs and do that. So I think that also would have been a time that would have been great. But I was 25 years old, and that was 25 years ago. So I just think that I think this is such a long time coming, and I think that people are going to benefit so much from this, especially women. I feel like it's such a big deal. Not that men wouldn't, obviously, but I just feel like for us, it matters, like, how we look for ourselves, not for other people as much, but for ourselves, to feel empowered every day. I think that definitely carried through for me in my treatment and wearing my husband's t-shirts. That's not really what I would have chosen for myself at all. I mean, not that to knock his t-shirts, I just didn't want to be that person wearing those. I mean, he's 6'1" and like has 120 pounds. I mean, I don't want to be wearing a dress t-shirt, like, like it looks like a dress, and like his sweatpants all rolled up, like, it was just definitely not the look I was going for.
Yeah. What was your biggest self-discovery after you were diagnosed? And how have you built off of that as a survivor?
So I'm going to read a little bit of this because sorry.
No.
Just because this was like such a thought-provoking question for me, and I loved it. I think as a mom and a cancer patient, and trying to keep my girls protected, like yet informed. Like I realized that like when we as a family became involved in the American Cancer Society, I was able to teach them something that you normally could never teach, and that is service and making turning your mess into a message. And that became a mantra in our house. And I think that it sounds hokey or whatever, but it worked for us. Like it was something that I could have never taught my kids, but when the rubber met the road and American Cancer Society kept showing up for me in different places in my life, they were superheroes flying in. We decided that that is the organization we wanted to support, and that we volunteered in so many capacities. um and I don't think that that message could have been taught without this diagnosis. So and although we were all very service oriented, I think that we all had that mindset. My husband and we did try to, and we tried to pass it on. Our kids were 7 and 3. So how do you really explain that to them, except for like, we give back, we pay it forward, we do things for other people because we can, and because they made it possible for us to be here where we are. So I think that for me, I think that was the biggest self-discovery, in that sense of like that I wanted to pay it forward more like than ever before in my life, and I wanted to keep teaching that lesson to my children. And I think that was like a huge part of our banding together as a team in our family, and what helped me each day to get through the daunting treatments and all of that, because I knew we were really all on the same page and we all wanted the same things. And that was to help other people in this on this journey, and I think that was the biggest moment. And as a mom, I it makes me proud to know that I was able to teach that, although like you always think you're not doing a good enough job, and that makes me proud, because they're still like that today, and they still help me do those things and volunteer with me still. So
That's awesome. They still do events with you.
yeah, they do.
That's so good.
Yeah. And when I speak at events, they're my biggest cheerleaders. When I run the marathons or whatever I do, they're there cheering me on. And when we did Relay for Life, they were on the committees with me. They were in different realms on the committees, and they also had teams, and they brought their friends. When they were in Girl Scouts, they made the Girl Scouts come and do it. Like they were like, come do this with us, and they were like roped people in to do Relay for Life with us. And like, but it was good, because like then they introduced a whole other group of people of what service was. So it was just this trickle down effect of everybody in our community then paying it forward, and not knowing that they were being leaders in that charge. I think that was, it
Well,
makes me really.
do you have any, who are your, I'm sure your daughters are like your biggest motivators, but is there anyone else in your life, or like any specific motivations that drive you every day?
Definitely them, for sure, and my husband. I think that living this life and knowing that I wasn't going to live this life possibly, do you know what I mean, is a huge motivator for me. And I think even my students, I've been a kindergarten teacher for 23 years, and showing up for them is a big deal for me. And I love what I do. And so that definitely is, they help. My little 5-year-olds help me. They've helped me all along the way. I mean, I wanted to go back to work 6 months after I was diagnosed, just because I missed my little babies. But I think that yeah, I could say that. And I think other patients and other people in my life have been motivators for me. Other patients that I've watched go through this journey as well, motivates me. Seeing like teams of people gathering together motivates me, like Team Determination for American Cancer Society. Watching people, just strangers, choose this for all different reasons, choose this charity to run their marathons and fundraise. And that's a huge motivator for me. I think because they could have picked anything else. And the fact that they're the fundraising dollars, and I'm not a commercial at all, but I'm just saying like they really are working in people like me, and that is a huge motivator because without the research, I wouldn't be here. Without that 1-800 number, I feel like I wouldn't be here. Without, like so much of that support, I don't think I would be here. And I think that, and if I was still here, like because of that, like I think that all of that led up to my success. And it's very empowering to know that, like to know that you have that support team and motivating, it motivates me every day to keep doing this. Like I coach for the American Cancer Society now, and as a running coach, and that motivates me because I feel like even if I could help somebody share the joy in running that I have, that maybe then they'll want to keep doing this too. So I think that that's a big motivator for me.
How do you empower yourself on a daily basis? Do you have like any routines or anything that keep you aligned or
So a couple things like so. Well, let's see. So I'm pretty spiritual. I have a strong Catholic faith, but like I also am very spiritual, and I have this running calendar like next to my bed, and every day I have to rip off the page, and it just like it helps me to get out and get moving, and like and it's like this little like it's a quote on about running or just about life, and it helps me every day. And I think you know I obviously can't talk about my kids enough, but like I just feel like ever since this journey really started for me, every day I wrote them notes and put post-its in their lunch boxes. And when I'm able to like just write them a quick note or a quote that like resonated with me, it empowers me throughout the day too. Like I'm like, oh, I should live by that quote today. Like, and just so I think that it's empowering to be able to read those things, but then pass them on to other people that might need them throughout the day too. And my family like knows that I'm hokey like that, and I like to stick post-its wherever. Like my husband gets a post-it note every once in a while. I'm like, he's grumpy, he could use a little post-it note. I think it's really hard being a woman in our society and to feel empowered and feel always good about yourself, like and I'm my own worst enemy with like being so hard on myself. And but I try to be positive or try to like turn the kaleidoscope a little bit because if I see something negative or think something negative, like people are watching, my students are watching, my kids are watching. Like I don't want them to always see me as like somebody that's negative or like beating myself up over things like silly things that I didn't do well in a race, or I didn't like how my clothes looked that day. And I like I don't want them. They're women too, and I want to empower them to feel good in their own bodies. And I am very bad at that for myself. So it definitely has to be like I definitely have to work on that. So and then if they see this ever, they will definitely agree.
what advice would you give on how to best support a loved one going through cancer treatment?
This was another really like thought-provoking question because there are so many things that I think people they mean so well, and they want to give you these positive messages, they are so appreciated. But I think that what sometimes was really difficult for me was when people would be like, you got this and you're so strong and you're going to come through this. And there were days that I was like, how do you know that? Like, I don't feel that way. I don't feel like I got this. I don't feel so strong. And how do you know that I'm going to get through this? Like, I don't even know on a regular basis if I'm going to get through this. And although I appreciated it, and I think that people think like they don't mean to be like hurtful, like at all. And I know that they really do believe that about me when they're giving that advice. And I do believe that about other patients, but there are days that you don't feel like that. And I think that my advice would be just that. It's okay to feel like you might not get through this. And it's okay to feel defeated and feel all the feelings. Don't live there. Don't like unpack and live there, but and believe that you do got this. And on those days, be so proud that you can do that. But it's okay to feel those feelings, and it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to have support around you. And it's okay to say, I need to be by myself, like, and feel these deep, heavy feelings, or to have a pity party that day. Like I said, I don't mistake that for like like thinking like you can just do this all by yourself, because you can't and you shouldn't. And you're and I do believe that when people say you're not alone, they do want to be there. So if you did reach out to somebody and said, I really do need your help, I don't think anybody would turn you away. So I think that asking for help is a huge part of this process. And I think that it's so hard to do, because you feel like a burden already. You've already burdened your family with this horrible news of you have cancer and you might not be here, and you're fighting for your life. And then you have to say, well, can you help me get dressed? Or can you make food for the kids because I'm too sick to do that? Or yes, I think a meal train would be a good idea for our family at this time. Like, it's very hard to do that because it's humbling, and your ego takes a little bit of a blow maybe. But I think that in the end, you are uniquely you, and whatever you have to do to deal with this, um there's no right or wrong. There's just no right or wrong. And you do whatever you can, and you fight as hard as you can, and you ultimately have to make all of those decisions for you. But hopefully you're not alone. And if you are, call that 1-800 number, like, reach out, ask for help.
Can you tell us like a little bit more about your journey with running, like when you first started and like when did it become a passion for you?
So it actually started when I was in high school. I was like such a shy kid, and I didn't have like, so I have a twin sister, and I was living in her shadow, like for my whole life. And I chose that. Like it was definitely like my choice, because but she was so outgoing and out there, and she was big into dance, and and my parents put me in dance because of her, and I really didn't want to do dance. Like, it was just not something that I would do. And I was running the mile in our gym class, and my gym teacher was like, and all the girls walked, they hated it. They hated doing it for the physical fitness test and all that. And but I loved it. And I was like, this is fun. This is my favorite thing, because it wasn't like it was on your own. Like, it wasn't a team sport. I didn't have to talk to anybody. I was so shy. And so it was just on my own. So and when I finished, she was like, you're really fast. And I was like, I am. Like, I didn't know. Like, I just knew I was done, but all my friends were walking. So I was definitely faster than them. So I really had no idea. And she's like, I'm going to talk to the track coach about you. And I was like, okay. And he reached out to me like a couple of days later, and he's like, oh, I heard we should do some mile trials and stuff like that. And I was in ninth grade. And he asked me to come on to the varsity track team. And I was like, really? Like, okay. And that was the next thing I knew, that I was running track for high school, and cross country. And that's what I really fell in love with, like trail running and running longer distances. And then I ran through college. And then that's when my heart condition kind of kicked in. When I was older, I was like in my 20s. And but I still was able to run, but it wasn't the same. And then but once I had those surgeries, I was able to run again. And but then when I had children, I had my daughter at 28. And so like that was really like when I kind of stopped running. And then like I would run here and there, maybe run like a 5K in my community, but like nothing, I was kind of out of shape, and I, had my kids and stuff. But when I was diagnosed with cancer, I remember being like, if I get through this, I really miss running. And I knew it was like one of those things that like fed my soul. And it was like something that was my time. And I remember it being like just my time, and me being on like outside in fresh air. And I'm like, I'm gonna do that again one day. And I just kind of kept it as my dangling carrot, and like hoped that one day that was gonna be the case. And I was pretty so it was like 2010 when I started running. So I was 2 years into my diagnosis, but I was still being treated, actively treated with chemo and stuff. But my doctor said, give it a try, as long as you're feeling well enough to do that. So I was able to, and I ran a local 5K, and I saw a team determination shirt that said American Cancer Society. And I was like, oh, how do I find out about that? Because I was already involved in Relay for Life. I had no idea that they had a branch of endurance running. And I was like, oh, well, this would be really cool. Like if they had an endurance, because it said determination endurance team. And I was like, this is right up my alley. Like this is something I would love to pursue. And that 800 number came in to play again because I was like, I called again and I was like, well, I'm wondering how I get in touch with like team determination. And they were like, oh, I know what that is. I was like, oh, good. Cause I'm asking like foreign, like I felt like it's such a foreign question for me because I was like, I saw it on a t-shirt. And so she put me in touch with this woman that was in charge at the time of team determination. And she told me that they had half marathons and marathons that you could run, nothing shorter, like no other shorter distances. And I was like, oh, well, I haven't run in a really long time. And I was like, how am I going to run like that? And she's like, well, they have coaches and they send you programs on email and you just have to have a fundraise, And I was like, whoa, okay, well, I can do that. And so a couple of days later, I signed up for this half marathon. I was in the Hamptons on Long Island, and that was my first like taste of team determination. And a year later, I was running my first marathon with them. So it was like I was like hook, line, and sinker. Like this is great. Like I was part of a team that I didn't really get to even meet the whole team because they were mostly based in New York City and they didn't have much on Long Island. So I was really doing a lot of the training all by myself. I would just follow the programs that they would send through email, and I would just do what I was told and run those things. And and then the next time I think that day that I ran that Hamptons marathon, I met Coach Ramon, and he's the coach now still. And it was like one of his first events for American Cancer Society. He had left another charity and come to ACS. So pretty much both of us have like grown up in team determination together, which is kind of cool. Like he's older than me, but he became a coach, and I got to really be friends with him and watch him grow in his coaching too. And it was such a cool process. And I'm running New York City this year, and this will be my 12th marathon.
How do you see yourself continuing with American Cancer Society in the future?
Hmm. So, I thought about a couple things. Like I definitely want to continue coaching for sure with team determination. I hope that is a possibility, like that I could keep volunteering and doing this. I think it is, but definitely want to do that. I would love to, as difficult as it is sometimes to speak and share my story. I think doing those kind of events is very meaningful, to share what this organization has to offer. So to be able to speak to groups of people and let them know what's available to them, I think that's I'm very passionate about that. So I hope that could be an opportunity for me. I mean, I've done that in the past, but maybe in the future some more. And I think I love the advocacy piece. I was involved with ACS CAN, which was their advocacy group. But it's pretty time consuming, but they go to Albany and they lobby, and they go to DC and they lobby. Maybe one day I'll be on that floor lobbying for patients and what they need to live and get what they need with our lawmakers. I'm hoping maybe one day I could do that. But they have given me so much, so many opportunities that I'll take whatever I could get. I think that way back in the day, I did this like vision board thing, and one thing was important to me, and not because of like my face or anything like that, but to be one of the voices of this organization, because voice is such a big thing for me. I almost lost my voice. I had throat cancer, and So being able to express myself and to have a voice in this fight is so important to me. And ACS gave me that voice, and I am forever grateful for that.